Hey guys, this is a real treat. This is an inside look at the Sinners jukebox scene, by far the most talked about sequence of the year. Ryan Coogler is with all of his production department heads, and they break down what went into this unforgettable sequence. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hope you enjoy the video.
It came from the same place that the script came from. Like, it was a way for me to make something fun, something that I felt like only I could make. This is the movie I'm talking about, not the scene, you know, but what it really came down to was like a study on like that act of remembrance that I'll do for my uncle after he passed away. My Uncle James passed away in 2015, and he was the person who kind of introduced me to blues music. I never really would call myself like a blues music fan while he was alive, but after he died, I would find myself listening to those records to like think about him, remind myself of him. And during that process is when I fell in love with the music. And yeah, like the power of any type of art, if you have like an association with it, like if you used to eat a dish with a loved one. One of my favorite movies, Ratatouille, is basically about that idea. Yeah. Like y'all know, like where the critic eats the Ratatouille, he goes back to being a kid, like that's a real thing. For me, blues music was that. I would listen to these records and close my eyes and feel like my uncle was there with me after I had lost him. So when I got to that point in the script, you know, where Preacher Boy performs for the first time and the juke joint is active, is working, they got it all done in that day, you know, it hit me again, like while I was making the movie, and then tried to use film language to kind of portray the power of this art form, but like on a larger scale. And it just gave us the opportunity to take a lot of risks in each department.
You succeeded.
Thank you. And we were kind of in uncharted waters with the format, you know, being two formats that hadn't been done in one film together. For this one, man, we would meet early and often, like all of us in the room together, and we would just kind of like challenge each other on, and we would make each other's problems our problems. Like Hannah might say, I know you guys talk all the time, but you might overhear them talking about Hannah say, hey, I got this kind of paint. It'd be cool if you can highlight this for me, or all of them will ask Hannah, hey, I need a light there in design, if you can give me some practicals, you know, like.
Talking about production design, cinematography, what were some of the conversations between the two of you?
When I read the script the one time, and it said montage, right? Juke joint montage, and it took me a minute to figure out what it was. I was kind of afraid to ask Ryan, like, what is this? And I couldn't even describe it. It took a long time for me to like, you know, but mostly I was, you know, concerned with the blocking of all the stuff, right? Like Ryan and I would talk, he's like, here's kind of what I need. He did a sketch for me. I did a sketch, and it was like, yeah, that. And then we like taped out the juke joint. So really I was creating the juke, right? And knowing that this montage was coming, it was as we were getting towards it, because at that point they were all rehearsing and all the camera work and all the, you know, intricacies of that. And I was trying to figure out how do we burn the ceiling. I want to do I want to do everything, you know, everything needs to be practical as much as possible, because that ceiling did burn. And like, should it be wood? Should it be wood and metal? Can we burn metal? Of course we can burn metal, just make it really hot, like 300 degrees. And so anybody, like, I think those guys were there for it. I was like, and like, what does the floor need to do, and what are the pieces that need to be there as far as like the DJ tables showing up, and the story, which was there's a piece of everybody in the juke joint. You have to look for it, and like there's a piece of each of
fire. Remember, it goes down into the exterior location that you made for us on the land.
Oh, right.
This is how it worked for real.
I'm middle child energy. This is big sister. So we did. So it was outside, right? Like the ceiling burned in the stage, and then we built like a sort of already burnt down juke joint perimeter outside. I said to Ryan, because he knows. He's like, we should set the piano on fire. The funniest story, because that's all I got right now, is I said to the special effects guys, I'm like, okay, you know, Delroy's gonna be sitting there, but just do a little thing, just do a little bit. And Ryan and Autumn, you know, they had their hands full that night, and I was just there in everybody's way. They light that thing. Paul and Delroy on one side of that piano thing. And I'm just shooting. And I walk out and Michael's like, well, how hot is it in there? Can I cuss? I said, it's hot. And I said, it's super hot. And he was like, well, how hot is it? I said, how hot as fuck? And then that was my time with the montage.
Yeah, I think for me, there's like, when I read Ryan's script, there's always something in it that is special. And I think on another Q&A, he had mentioned that it was in italics, which reminded me. And then I think he made a joke of like, it means we need to figure this out. Like, you know, you read it and then you go to another place because it's so unique and imaginative. And then you have that conversation with him about what it means to him. And I think that's where I draw from. And so he explained that. He already had some boards that he had kind of drafted up to give us kind of an overall idea. He wanted it to be a one fluid shot. That means because we have an IMAX format, we wanted to shoot with IMAX, it has to either be on a crane or Steadicam. And I think we figured out that it'd be best on the Steadicam because it would give him that movement from character to character that he was looking for and be able to swim through the space elegantly. And that's a 75-second mag because it's too heavy to put a full load in the IMAX camera. So there are 3 stitches within that sequence that's in the interior of the space. I think at the root of it is because we care so much about Ryan and what he writes that we want to execute it. Whatever he wrote on the page is as beautiful, and you don't feel the technical of what we're achieving.
Miles, this is your first acting role. Months learning to play the guitar.
I think I was just like blown away. You know, there was no song attached to it yet at that point, so I was kind of just, you know, reading, you know, the montage and them talking about the different ancestors and the rock and stuff. So I knew it was going to be a really, you know, important part of the film, and then having conversations with Ryan. But I was just like, man, like, how is this going to work? You know, I thought it was going to be ghosts flying around and stuff like that. I didn't know how it was going to work, you know. So I was just excited. I was excited. Once we got to New Orleans, I've been practicing, you know, with Ludwig. I heard the song that him and Raphael created, and instantly it just, you know, it gave me more context to Sammy. You know, like, this song is everything that he's trying to say to his cousins, to his father, to everyone that, you know, is listening to his music. So once I got the song, I was able to internalize it a little bit more and then prepare for that moment. Got really good sleep before that day. I think they told me like the day before, like, so we're montages tomorrow. I'm like, okay. And had been building up the anticipation. So I was excited for that scene. And then when we got there, everything was just laid out. Like, all of the artists, the musicians, everybody was in their place. And they had been practicing for weeks. I was, you know, off to myself working on the guitar and stuff like that. So when I got there and I saw everybody, it was just amazing. The energy was on 100. The whole cast was there. Everybody was, you know, supporting me. Ryan was very supportive. So it was a special moment.
I count like all the years after my uncle passed as like a part of the writing process, you know what I mean? But in terms of like the production, it was, you know, we were on a fast schedule. And the big question was, were we gonna use like blues standards or were we gonna write our own music? You know, that was like a big debate we were having. Like, and I think eventually we were like, well, we should write some songs, you know? Then we went to Memphis and spent time in Mississippi and we started to think about like, you know, we're gonna write an original song, you know, for Sammy to perform. And it was like, yo, who's gonna write it? Now, this is, I don't know if I ever told you this, Raphael. But so Raphael, and specifically his older brother, Dwayne, rest in peace. They're the founding members of Tony, obviously. Yeah. But they from East Oakland. And his big brother grew up with my daddy. And I know I went to school with Dwayne, rest in peace, with his kids and everything. And Tony always been my favorite group, just being from Oakland. But then, like, as I got older, I started to learn that, like, Raphael had written a lot of my favorite songs. You know, like I found out he wrote "Lady" by D'Angelo, rest in peace. And he played the bass on that, and you know, and then I did this crazy thing that I recommend for all husbands. Like, in the summer before we made the movie, I loaded up like 2 Sprinter vans full of all the women in my life and took them to see Beyonce. And I Like I love Beyonce's music, but I'm not in the Bayhive or nothing, right? You know what I mean? So I ain't listening to everything consistently. But we was there, and Cuff It comes on, and I'm like, man, this might be my favorite Beyonce song, you know what I mean? And I remember I'm literally at the concert, and I Google, I'm like, man, who wrote this song? And I see Raphael's name, and I'm like, yo, this dude might be the best. This dude might be the best like songwriter to ever live, you know what I mean? From Oakland, you know what I mean? So it was just on my mind. So then Louis was like, hey, yo, who's gonna write this generational song? I'm like, man, we should hit Raphael, see if he open to it. So that was how I came up with the idea, and him and Louis linked up. And I guess you could talk about like how that was, Raphael.
Yeah, but how it happened, I'm a fan of, and he's from Oakland. Just so happy to see somebody worldly and leave our hometown and come in and help other people. So when he did Fruitvale, did the film, I know that story so well. Actually, a friend of mine, No ID, his assistant said, Ludwig is looking for you. That's how I found out. Came to his studio. His studio is very beautiful. He has the most beautiful furniture, Italian furniture. So I was trying to jack everything, dude, was kind of having it. He gave me the story. He pitched it to me like so well. He was very calm. He told me this is a very small film. So that took a lot of pressure off me. I'm like, cool, small film, cool, we're going for that. Then he tells me about Ryan's uncle and the blues. Then he puts Ryan on the phone, FaceTime. And then Ryan pitches it to me very calmly. But they never told me what they wanted me to do. So am I scoring a film with Welcker? And I was like, no, that's not happening. But he said, we need the song. Okay, so I'm thinking, can I go back to my studio and come up with an idea and then me and Luke work it out? And then Ryan just says to me on FaceTime, we would like it if you just do it like now. Luke looks at me like now. It's like, we leave in 2 days to New Orleans. And I'm like, okay. So now I'm thinking about Ryan from East Oakland, from Oakland, and Luke was this big guy, and he did all this stuff, all this music, and I'm like, am I being tested? So I kind of felt like I never saw the script, anything was nothing to see. I felt like we were like 3 bank robbers. And I was just a dude they told just to drive the car in front of me. And you just gonna drive the getaway car. So I think that's what I was in the film. And I had to stand there and work on the song with Ludwig, and we sat there for like 2 hours and we just went over guitar riffs and we played. Like Miles said, it's definitely rich in ancestry. It takes me all the way back to the Baptist, Union Baptist. My pastor is a Baptist, and they sing hymns all the time. And I would listen to deacons sing at home. And so I just started singing words. I don't remember anything that I sang when I recorded it. That was it. The next time I saw it was IMAX. And I was just sitting there, and the movie came on, and I didn't know what I was looking at. I was really confused. And I was saying, this is a small film. And I'll just credit those two, Ryan and Ludwig, for just being very professional, being very great pitchers. That way it didn't have me nervous. That I could never imagine was the most beautiful, biggest voice on the song. It was Miles.
Looked like it must have been incredibly fun to get to go in all those directions.
Yeah, it was a lot of directions for sure. But one thing I can tell you is that this man over here, Ryan Coogler, is a genius. Yeah. The film has everything I've ever wanted to be as a costume designer, a storyteller, bringing surrealism, bringing spirit, bringing symbolism and story to the screen. And I had a great opportunity in this surrealistic montage to do all of that. So one of the genius of Ryan Coogler is he remembers everything about 80s fashion. And he was born in the 80s. So he'd say, it's the most obscure ones too. He'd say, that's Echo. You got that guy in Echo right there. And I was like, how does he even know this? It actually looks the way it was written. But there were little gems in there. We could start with Miles, his color palette. When we fit Miles, his clothes were beiges. It was mostly beige, and we dyed everything so he would have this rooted earth tone quality about his clothes that worked with the whole film. And then when you see him start out this surreal montage, he's grounded in his color palette, he's grounded in the song. You really know, when you come back to him, you come back to earth. And the surreal guitarist that comes in, we were looking at Bootsy Collins, but we didn't want it to, overshadow everything. So it was a delicate balance to get that costume right and not overstate it so that you could move along through the scene. And then you see the hip hop dancer in the middle of the floor, and he's wearing like an authentic LL Cool J look from the 90s with the Kango. And the Zouali dancer, who was one of my favorites. And for him to come in the fitting room and see the costume and see his eyes light up was thrilling because you felt like you got it right. But the headpiece, we had a hard time, with that dance and the movement and rehearsals, it kept falling, and like he's got on a football helmet underneath that thing. Ryan shared his heart with us. He shared his Uncle James with us, and that meant a lot. It meant a lot. It meant that we had to get it right for him, and we all felt the spirit of that love and that passion, not only for filmmaking, but also for family. And we had become a family in New Orleans. Like the power of alignment, like we were aligned. And it was a love letter to Uncle James. It was a love letter to my Aunt Ramona. I mean, we could all kind of put ourselves in the South and understand it. And I think that's what also added to this, beautiful story that we told.
When I read the script and going through the surreal montage and breaking down each ancestor that was a part of it, we wanted to make sure that we respected each culture. The big part was, for me, for the hair, is paying attention to everyone's texture. Okay, great, this guy has very long dreads. What we're gonna do is pull his locks up and create a tower, for the griot. But I wanted to make sure that it waterfalled out, and when he moves and he hits locos and you see his head move and it gives you movement. And we wanted everyone to feel the spirits as you move throughout the room. And Ryan, you did a great job. We was trying to figure out how do we follow this? I'm reading it on paper, but then what do we need to do to make it come to life? I do want to mention for makeup, they wanted to make sure that everyone had this glow. And you can see the difference between the spirits as they move through the room, where most of the juke dancers, you see them and their mood, and you see the sweat and the heat that's coming out from them in this moment. But then also, as the spirits came through, they just kind of like floated through, and we moved through that scene. And that was a big part, especially for the Chinese opera dancer. It was a beautiful headpiece that was used. Perlene's future. She had these very intricate braids that we intertwined into a headpiece that Ruth had designed, but the headpiece was heavy. And we knew that this lady had to dance all the way throughout the room for hours. And what do we do to make sure that it was stable? So I just realized, let's create these nice braids and then just intertwine it and wrap it around the headpiece so when she moved, it didn't fall off.
For this particular sequence, I think the biggest things for us, it started out as a scene with a live performance. You have Miles, who is introduced for the first time in front of these patrons. You can hear a pin drop at that moment. He's out there and he's vulnerable and nobody really knows what's about to happen. I noticed that, when he's playing the guitar, his right hand wasn't really moving, and we're always trying to figure out how can we keep the sound consistent, when you're going from wide shots to tight shots. We want that guitar to sound the same and as good as, when you can get that shotgun microphone right up next to it, in a tight shot. We also had the fact that these are all relics, these instruments, or they belong to these musicians. And so modifying them wasn't really like an option. We had our costume department sew a microphone into the cuff of his shirt, just so that we could get it right next to that guitar and record that performance. And then, you know, it cuts away to the section where Delta Slim is kind of giving him this, some wisdom, and then it cuts back, and then that's when we're in the surreal montage. When it got to that point, that was really more of a playback situation. You know, at the point when you see the DJ come onto into the frame, you know, that was physically like figuring out how are we going to get this turntable set up, brought onto the stage. And I don't know who came up with the solution, but it's great. But our prop master, Doug, brought it in, and then he faded into the background. He became one of the people that's not in bed. This whole movie, going into it, my focus was always on these live performances, you know, and not only just live performances, but again, with the acoustic, 110-degree weather has a pretty big impact on acoustic guitars. A member of Ludwig's team, Noah Gorlick, who was with us, that he would jump out at any minute, you know, between every single take, he was tuning those guitars. To be honest, when I read the script and I saw the surreal montage and we talked about it, and I was like, what's this? Like, what am I supposed to do on this one? And it was like, oh, well, that portion is gonna be, you know, mostly playback. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I'm like, I can kind of relax, you know? But then I learned pretty much like a day or so before how we were going to really shoot this. You know, we did it however many takes we did, and we landed on that piano part, and Ryan was happy, everybody was happy, and I'm freaking out because I'm like, we hit that point like 3 or 4 seconds early, and that now means that time has to be added on to the next point. And so I'm thinking like we might run out of, you know, not be able to complete the whole the run, you know, with the 3 stitch points. And I brought it up to Ludwig, who was on set with us, which is like something that never happens, having a composer on set. And he and our music editor, Felipe, they were like, oh, well, like, we'll just change the song. You know? So he's like, he goes over to his, to the computer, and he's like composing on set with us, like adjusting the song, which ultimately adjusts everything. But it was like, it just had this ability to just continue to roll with the punches. And so to me, that was like, you know, being part of that and being, you know, tied so closely with everyone, and you know, bringing the technical side of it and having those creative opportunities. That's what I'm most proud of with this movie.
When it comes to visual effects, Michael, we've heard the collaboration with you referenced a few times already.
Yeah, I mean, I learned that every Ryan Coogler film is just a huge and massive collaboration, and that's really what makes it beautiful to work on his films. Going back to the script and reading it, the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh, I think this is going to look like something out of Harry Potter with a bunch of ghosts, and you know, and I couldn't be further from where it was. Like, you know, that's what the visual effects guy thinks. But the one thing that was, you know, absolutely amazing is that we were shooting all of this, and Ryan making adjustments, and, you know, we want to be a little bit more along on this guy and on that person. Like, everyone else was just dynamically adjusting to that as well. And that, you know, I've never worked together that closely with a composer who's just adjusting the song. So that was quite amazing. And then, you know, fast forward to the last day of principal photography, which is when we burnt the roof down. and I mean, Hannah's laughing, but just that whole thing. I remember, I think, a while back before that, I got a call from Autumn at night. She was like, "Are you crazy? Like, please tell me there's no moving camera or something, anything like that." It did happen on the last day. We shot that, and it looked amazing. And that was the end of principal photography. And now going into post and working with Mike Schawver, the editor, and, you know, revamping it all. We had put it all together. All the stitches were beautifully. That element that we shot looked amazing. And then Ryan goes, "Hey, I want to go through the roof now," which meant now we needed a moving camera. And at that point, you know, we hadn't shot that, so we used that as a beautiful high-end reference to just do a digital recreation of that fire and of that roof pushed through. And there's an image of Joshua Tree that's showing the Milky Way in the sky that I shot like when I was out there. And I remember every single time that we looked at it in one of the reviews, we pushed the one Ryan would always say, Joshua Tree.
You know, a lot of the sequence, because of all the planning, the pre-production, and these incredible artists involved, you know, for me, my part, a lot, you know, as the editor, you're the first audience. And so making sure that this experience is the memorable one, is this thing that makes people float out of their seats and, you know, feel like they've gone through something. And so, you know, there were little things throughout where, you know, maybe a little push-ins here, a little speed around here to just keep the flow of it and keep people engaged, you know, and different things like that. But there were a lot of conversations about how we get into the scene. And, you know, we all loved it. We were big fans of it. It was never coming out as a movie. But there was a certain percentage of people at the test screenings who didn't react well to it, I guess you could say. And I think inherently there's a what the fuckness to the sequence. And when you're, you know, anytime you edit a movie, you're always trying to walk this line between intrigue and confusion. You don't want to go too far into confusion. And, you know, you want people to say, oh, what the fuck, that's cool, not what the fuck's happening? And so, you know, when you have Boots and Collins show up in the middle of a juke in the 1930s, you're going to automatically have that. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, we thought of that as the main course. And so we needed to whet the palate. We needed to let the audience have some appetizers so their hunger would grow for it and it would be more palatable, I guess, when they watched it. So, you know, one of the first things that we needed to do was make it feel like it was from Sammy's perspective. In the performance, we, you know, towards the end of that performance, once everybody's wowed and we start to go, you know, into his head, pushing as far as we could. And we, you know, call Ralla and how far can we push in? You get like 20%. And then we'd say, can we do 30? And he's like, I don't know, and then 40, and I don't know. But getting as close to Miles in this moment to then pull out to reveal the world. It's also the moment we did, one of the two moments in the movies, which I'm so glad we did because I love it, is when we changed the aspect ratio in the IMAX sequence. And so, you know, it's a dangerous thing to do because you're reminding the audience they're watching a movie, which if the audience is realizing they're watching the movie, they're out of the alpha trance that they're in when they're watching it. But, you know, setting it up to be such a subjective type of emotional feeling from Sammy is sort of how we entered into that moment to make it, you know, understand that, okay, different things could happen and you're entering a place where, you know, reality and magic and history all combine and dance together, right? There's a scene with Delta Slim at the piano, which was actually cut out of the movie at the time, but we loved what was in it so much and it was so unique and special, and obviously Delroy is incredible and Miles. So we took a few lines from that and we realized that it didn't take people out to see a scene or moments from a scene they didn't see before, you know, but really the thing that, you know, really helped us and helped it work was Ryan came up with the idea of having the prologue of the movie. And, you know, editing isn't always this scene, you know, scene can be cut perfect, but it doesn't feel right because of what came before it. And filmmaking is a kaleidoscope. Once one thing changes, everything changes. So having this prologue and having Annie speak about music and, you know, the gift being so true, it can pierce the veil between life and death. And so associating, you know, we don't sort of show Sammy yet in the movie in that prologue, but there's a guy who's basically you could think of as Sammy, and through musicians and special musicians, connecting magic and ancestors and that. So when the audience is getting that piece of information as they're settling in and they're taking everything in, they automatically know, as an editor, especially at the beginning of the movie, you sort of have to teach the audience what they're about to watch. And if it's a comedy, make them laugh, because they need to know that it's okay to laugh throughout the movie. If it's a horror movie, we, you know, have jump scares. Setting that up was such a brilliant idea and allowed us to unlock that sequence. And, you know, we had a lot of discussions about who should be speaking about this. You know, we talked about, you know, having several voices, but Annie truly is you know, the heart of the movie and the you know, an emotional center of the movie, but is the one that understands this otherworldliness and spirituality. So it just made sense, you know, to have her there, you know, speaking. So then when we get back to the sequence, repeating a few of those things, in the experience of watching the movie, you're familiar with this. So when you're ready for all this crazy shit to happen, and You're just along for the ride. I will say that one of the things I'm most proud of is in the shot that pulls back before we reveal Ramek at the very end. Towards the end, I realized that Cornbread didn't have an ancestor. He was sitting by himself at the door. Everyone else is having fun, dancing with their ancestors, but Cornbread's just working. And so I asked Ryan, and he was gracious enough to let us try. So, we talked to Michael, and they found sprites, and they had shot so many different elements of different things. So if you watch the movie now, Cornbread's still sitting at the door, but there's a ancestor next to him, vibing out and protecting them, just like he is.
It's like collaboration on this. And as we wrap, Ryan, I'd love to just ask you a little bit about what would you say about the way that this scene has landed with audiences in relation to what you were trying to say with it?
Yeah, not to get too deep. I'm a writer, director, and it's like a profoundly weird job, bro. And I'm partition it too, cause like there's like the writer side of what I do, but then there's like the director side. It's a really specific job, but a director is also just kind of useless, like out of context. You know what I mean? Like Miles can like make a song, Ruth can like make clothes, Hannah can make fucking anything, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like as a director, you need other people, and like when I think about other artists, I get incredibly jealous. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm the most jealous of musicians. It infuriates me to think about, like Raphael, like he did a one-man show like in Oakland the other day, and I was so proud of him, but I was, as proud of him was, I was 5 times jealous, you know what I mean? Like, why couldn't God give me these abilities, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Let's trade.
Yeah. You don't want that, bro, trust me.
I agree.
So like the magic that one song, like I got 3 kids now with my mom, and I don't know about the baby, but the 2 older ones love music, and over the holidays they was obsessed with this song called River that Joni Mitchell wrote. They was listening to the CeeLo version, but then I played them the Joni Mitchell version, and it was maybe like my 200th time listening to this song, and it was still like brand new. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, bro. Like, she sat down, wrote this, played this, and it just still has its value in the outer body experience that a really great song can give you, or a really great meal can give you. Like, for me, that's what I'm always trying to do with a movie. Like this art form that I was blessed with, it requires like the community. And like for some reason they listen to me for a few months out the year, you know?
Well, we can't do it without you, and we can't do it without a good story.
How it affects me is like it reminds me that this medium is still legitimate. You know what I mean? Like it still has a reason to exist. Yeah. It still has something to say. Actually, Saul Williams, who plays Beachler Boy's pops, he watched the version of the movie, and he said something that I'll never forget. It wasn't as pushed as far as me and Schawver and Ralla and Lulu would eventually push it. But he said to me, he said, "Hey man, like that scene is your solo as an artist. You know, that's your solo. So you gotta push it all the way here." So that made me feel like a musician for the length of that conversation.
That's the video, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it, and like and subscribe. See ya.